I'd love to talk about there's quite a few other things we got here, but how like walk me through like how are you guys generating leads? And then also I'd love to hear that like real example of like a lead comes in, it goes to this tech that's estimating and selling the job. Like um if you could kind of flesh out firstly the marketing, how are you guys generating the leads? And then I guess we'll pause there, but I'd love to hear like practically how that lead gets sent to the right tech, if that makes sense.
Y- Yeah, so generating leads, you want to go there first?
Yeah, yeah. Let's talk
We
about your
are,
marketing and how you're generating, enough business and having, eight, nine, 10 people and, moving on from there.
yeah, and it's taken a lot of forms. That's something that gets constantly evaluated. But today we do Google Ads, your pay per click, and we do LSA. Um, we post on all the socials, but we're not doing Facebook ads. I've done a lot of those in the past. I could talk about that. Um, And then we sponsor a local real estate publication called Central Mississippi Real Producers. It's part of what's called the N2O companies. And so they're focused on creating a space for the top 300 real estate agents in any market. And so we sponsor their publication. We go to their monthly events. Um, and then that gives us a list of those top 300 agents. Plus, there's a magazine, and each month, Wilk sits in there. That's our relationship manager, reads all the articles, emails all the features, talking about their article, what he liked about it. It's almost like a homework assignment. He's got to go read it, internalize it, say something back that was meaningful. Be positive,
Yeah,
and then be genuine. And
right.
then he
I
goes
love
through
that.
and looks at all the ads that are in there. If there's a home inspector or whatever, it's like, hey, saw your ad again, thought about you, et cetera, et cetera. And so that one's harder to measure. It's hard to measure ROI on that. It's just be there, be present. But we've done some direct mail. I do that once a month. I mean, once a year, maybe in the handyman space. I do it a lot with the flipping. And then we do some newsletters to existing clients inside of Jobber. I think that's it. And then we'll sponsor like some local events here and there. But that's more just because we just want to help. I wouldn't say that we do that because we're going to get business.
Sure.
Um,
That's a good
but yeah,
heart to hold
that's
in business. Be in your community, have a heart to help people. In my experience, when you kind of maintain that posture, it builds up this traction and this demand for what you're providing because people recognize like the best businesses, they truly just want to help.
that's right. Yep. And then of course all of our trucks are wrapped trucks and trailers, and that
Mm.
does a ton for us. And then we're starting this year. We realized that, and we may be headed here too, but we realized that long-term clients, repeat clients are worth like 6.8 times more to our business than,
Mm.
well, no, they're worth 13.2 times. Referrals are worth 6.8 times more. Once they stick, they're worth 13.2 to 14.6 what one-time clients worth. So now we're looking at, okay, how do we generate more referrals? What's the referral program? Because saying you've got all word of mouth, that's not very good. I can't reproduce that until I make a system that reproduces that. And so that's what we've been digging into this quarter and next
Mm.
quarter.
That is super sweet. Bef I definitely got to go into that. So any of our listeners,
You
check
said
out Steady.
tax.
What's that?
No, go ahead. Sorry.
Check out Steady Home Maintenance. Like, give them a Google search, their website, their personality, their culture. You're gonna see like this underlying current of this attraction that comes into their business. That of course there's website marketing, mailers, reviews, all this stuff, but it's surrounded by this authentic, amazing brand and personality that you guys have created. So you're one of my favorites to share in that vein, JR. So 13.2, the value of a repeat client is 13.2 times like a one-off client, and then
Yeah.
6.8 times value of a one-off client is a referral. I that kind of tracks in my brain if I had to come up with some estimates of value. How are you getting these numbers and this data?
Yeah. Well, before we go there, we got to plug you because y'all do our website, and y'all took it over. I guess that was probably a year ago. And then y'all do, so I mentioned we do a newsletter outside of Jobber, but y'all do a newsletter as well to our whole list.
Mm,
Y'all do a feed that goes into our gallery. So like there's a ton of stuff that you guys do at Handyman Marketing Pros for what creates that vision. And so I don't have the data right offhand on what the website might bring in. I don't care if it's zero. because when people go there, it does tell the story, right? Because they are going to check it out, whether they're filling out a form or not. They're going to that website and they're seeing these Google ads, which y'all have helped us craft and talk through and figure out how many we should be doing. Like there was even one time sorry, I got to say this. I sent an email to, I guess it was Taylor or somebody in your office. And I was like, hey, I'm thinking
Mm.
about doing this. And I didn't really ask. I was more saying, here's what I'm about to do. And she very lovingly, like y'all always do, said, hey, maybe we should consider not, but she didn't say it that way. She was like, well, maybe what if we just looked at this data right here and like then didn't do that? It's like, hey, I see what you want to say, which is, JR, please don't do that. Please just stay the course. And so we have people better than us helping us make some of these decisions. And so if you're not
Yeah.
dealing with Jason, y'all should be.
I appreciate the kind words, JR. And
Yeah.
I think you explained it so many ways of how our clients would say, like, yeah, they do some posts and some feeds and the website. It's really orchestrating this like underneath the surface is SEO rankings. People, you mentioned, SEO being really good for fence repair. That's a big kind of secondary target. There's all this algorithmic, this tactic that we know works. We just kind of hook into your business, deploy that on Google through the website so that we could start to build up more traffic, find how more people find you for handyman near me, stuff like that. So
Yeah.
um, appreciate the kind words, man. There's so much that goes into great marketing, and I do know doing this so many years, when we have a client that has the media and photos and personality that you guys have, the amazing authentic 5-star reviews that come in, it just makes good marketing great marketing when you're pushing out amazing people and amazing
Mhm.
culture.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's and it takes time though, which is a good segue back to your last question of this data, this number I
Mm.
spit out of, 13.2, whatever it was. How do we have that? What man, it took us 3 years to get this data that I'm about to talk about. And we have it because I'm ruthless with tracking numbers. Like I'm just even in the beginning, and I'll tell anybody this: just track everything, even if you don't know why. Just start a spreadsheet and start tracking this stuff. And one day you might need it, you might not, but if you do, you've got it. And so aligning yourself with a good CRM of some sort, something that you can track what's coming in and what's going out. I'm not talking about P&Ls at this point. I'm talking about just leads coming in, estimates and invoices, jobs, those kind of things. Having the data is key. If you've got data, man, you got power. You look at any of these big companies in the country that were probably all invested in the stock market, and most of them are their data. They've got a lot of data behind them, and that's really what they're generating is the data, and that's what's powerful,
Mm.
not just the widget. And so the data helps you make a decision. And I knew that very early on, which is why it's really hard in the beginning. And this goes back to one of your initial questions, Kobe, of how did we stay the course? Well, I knew that we had to get to year three. Like that's just where we had to get. So it's just like this, some of this stuff matters, but in year three, we're really going to have the things that we need to start making decisions. And so now, because we track everything meticulously as it comes in, and we're still refining this, like I think we're pretty good at it, but we still refine it almost weekly sometimes what we're tracking. But about, I guess it was the end of last year, we would have had enough customers to cycle through for 3 years. And so now I know what the lifetime value of a customer is. I know what the customer acquisition cost is, and I know what the lifetime value is because they've had a chance to cycle through. But they
Mm.
can't be a lifetime, you can't get a lifetime value if you're in the first 6 months. That's just not going to be very good. But our lifetime value on average really is closer to the number I gave you was a rolling 12, but on average for the since in business it's like 14.2x. So the
And just
the
to be clear
repeat
for our listeners, you're talking about the value of a repeat client is 14 times more than a one-off client. Is that correct?
bingo.
Like they just hire you
And
one time.
yeah, and then the referral based leads. So we're talking about two numbers really here. We're talking about the repeat client, which is the 14, they're worth 14.2 times more. So if new client pays me $100 and they stick around, they're going to wind up being worth $1,400,
Mm.
right? 14,000. Wait, I went to public school. 14 times whatever 100 is. Yeah, 1,400.
I
It's
went to public school in
14x.
Arkansas, brother.
Yeah. So 14x. And then if they are a referral lead versus a just came in off of Google, the referral is worth 6.8 times what the standard lead is for us.
Mm.
Now, and 62% right now of our business is coded actually as referral based business. We have a lot of referral business. but we don't know where it all comes from, or we didn't. And that was a big deal to us coming into the end of last year, trying to figure out what our rocks were going to be for this year, this quarter. Was going, okay, well, clearly that number is huge, right? It's think about it, well, what that is worth. Well, if 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 we know that a referral is worth 6.8x, and if they stick around, they're worth another 14, then what are we doing? That's where we got to put our money, you
Mm,
know?
And not
That's what we
only
got
are
to figure
they're
out.
not only are they worth more, they're going to drive more revenue, but you don't have that repeat cost to acquire the customer. You already paid to acquire them once, and they're just coming
That's
back.
right.
And referrals are
That's right.
free. Off the top
yeah.
of your head, do you know what your average LTV to CAC ratio is, or the lifetime value to cost to acquire a customer is?
Yeah, yeah, it's 14.2.
That's awesome, man.
That's a
And
good
I think
number. Above
So
above 10 for anybody listening is you're doing pretty dang good.
yeah, it's crushing it. It does. When I was trying to look real quick, I actually got a whole. We can keep talking while I look for it, but I've got
yeah.
a
So
little.
what? So my more direct question is like what is a basic rudimentary exercise like any listener could kind of figure out this for their business? And I want to also emphasize that the numbers, even if you don't do the exercise, you can rest assured knowing that your repeat clients are incredibly valuable than the one-offs. The referral, everyone knows, oh, that referral lead is so much higher quality. They're more ready to hire, if you will. There's less of that friction in the sales process, price, etc. Also understanding these numbers has this like grounding effect when you start to grow, when you start to invest in more marketing, that even though, your cost per lead in Google ads last month might have spiked to like $60 a lead or whatever a high number might be, you know that in there's going to be some repeat clients. There's going to be some referrals that are generated. And so you're planting these seeds that are ultimately going to produce this 13.2, 14 times value client that's calling you back, 4 times a year. So,
Yeah.
so you're connecting into Jobber. What would you say a really simple practical application if someone wanted to know this for themselves, if they were curious about their own numbers, what would be a good like place for them to start and start to kind of get these numbers for themselves?
First thing you got to do is track your leads coming in. So how many folks get keyed in as a lead? Now for us, we don't. Not everyone that comes knocking on our door gets put into Jobber as a lead. Um, Once they're qualified, so we have a little bit of a filter in there that says, "Oh wait, they called about a roof. We don't do roofs. Like there was a that's not really
Mm,
a. We're not going to be able to do that." We don't screen them too hard, but if it's a sure enough, heck no, they get pushed out. But you got to start by tracking your lead, number one. And then you've got to track from there to get one of the numbers we just said was the CAC or CAC, as you hear people say, customer acquisition cost. And so that's not cost of lead, that's cost to get someone from the door to a paying customer, right? And so from there to there, there's a couple of steps you've got to hit that you got to know. So you got to know the lead came in, boom, track that. The lead got a quote, boom, you want to know that. That's like a pull through to a quote. The
mm,
quote accepted or didn't accept. That's another one. The quote goes to a job. The quote goes to an invoice. And of course, did you get paid or not? That's pretty important. But that data right there from lead to invoice is what gives you those numbers that we just talked about. But then you got to be inside of a CRM that lets you go back to that same customer and run a job under that same profile. Otherwise, you can't track the repeat number, the which one was
mm,
already a customer. And
mm.
then, of course, inside of that, we track lead sources. Was it a realtor? Was it word of mouth? Was it Google, et cetera? And then that
Cool.
lets us know, of course, which one is worth the most to us,
Mm,
And so another way to think about that CAC to LTV that Kobe just mentioned, that's telling me for every dollar that I spend to acquire a customer, what's coming back to me, right? So if you look at it that way, for every dollar I spend, I'm getting 14 back. How much money can I spend? Like,
mm,
here's an open check, put it to work, please. And that's what you run into in a smaller market, though, is at some point you kind of tap yourself out and you have to start getting
yeah.
creative on where do you spend the money. And so we've had to get creative lately on how we spend the money. Because I was only at and that's an average right on the value. So there's some months that we were way ahead of that than the 14.1. But
Mm,
I'm only at 5% of my revenue on marketing. And really, in the way we're trying to grow, I need to be at like 8. That's where I'd like to
mm.
be. But I don't know where else to. to put it.
Yeah. So that's a good transition, man, into like knowing your territory. You're in Jackson, Mississippi market. You mentioned before we hit the record button, it's a lot smaller than Dallas or Los Angeles or whatever. So like in that vein, what are kind of your thoughts on, because it is a battle because you see other people doing like in your case, like, well, how do I get to that multiple millions with wait, like 3x more trucks on the road, but backdropping that with the reality of, you're just in a smaller market. What are your thoughts on that?
And two things globally, and then we can look at a number of pieces. And this is again, regardless of what widget or what you're looking at, you could be looking at somebody who's just a successful person. They're in a different race than you are. They started at a different time.
Mm,
It's a different track. There's different resources, different connections. You cannot look at someone for comparison. There's danger all over that, obviously.
hmm
As a measuring stick, as a what's possible, okay, maybe. You just got to have a bridle on that's pulling you back, saying, "Hey, don't compare, it's dangerous." Um, but you also can't look at them and go, the other way is, oh, well, I'll never get that because I'm not in Atlanta. I can't do that. Now, wait a minute. That's limiting belief. You can't do that either. So where I've always probably fallen more dangerous is and gotten us in trouble going, oh, well, they got to 3 million in 2 years. Why can't we? We're going to 3 million in 2 years, dang it. Well, then you don't get that. And if you'd analyze the market data just a little bit more, you'd realize what wasn't possible. Like your 3 million was 700,000. That is the equivalent of what that person was doing in their market with the same resources. You got to get it back to what you're doing. Um, there's probably some analogy for dollar cost averaging in the stock market right there, looking at inflation numbers and saying, okay, well, the dollar today is what in 10 years? It's kind of a similar deal. Like, what is, whatever Chris is doing in Atlanta, what is my version of that here? If I'm firing on all the cylinders he's firing on, if I've got a 68% close rate and I've got X, Y, and Z, what's going to be our cap out right here? And so that was a big thing to remember starting off. And I kind of went in the very beginning, I went too far into trying to be Chris, here. And then thankfully I went and sat with him for a couple of days and watched him operate. I'm like, oh wait, there's 4 million people in Atlanta. This is a big market. We're playing with a few 100,000 total, not who we want to do business with. Who we want to do business with is way less. And then you got to look at income. So not just the data of how many people are here, but what's the income level here. And then just go right through your territory. If you're a handyman, go right around. Do people fix their houses or don't they? If they don't, if the care is not there, you may have a hard time fishing in that pond, you know? Uh, so that's you have to do all of that research too, so that you can be realistic on what's ahead of you. There's
mm,
nothing worse than picking, especially like in a sales world, if you're if you move the goalpost on Kobe every 6 months and didn't have data behind it, just thinking, oh yeah, he's got to sell 1 million or it's not going to work. Well, man, what if he could only sell 500,000? Now there's a funny story here though. I heard this one time. It was a lady goes to a sales conference and she sits in the back and the guy says, hey, we got everybody that comes through here gets a 70% close rate. And she's like, okay, great. Well, she goes home, she starts working on her craft, and she gets to like 62, 65, 61, 64. Like she just can't hit 70. She's frustrated because she's great at what she does. She comes back to the conference and she goes to the front, sends over, she says, I got a bone to pick with you, man. You told me 70% guaranteed, and I'm only hitting 65, 68. He said, I said 17. So so she heard what she wanted to hear, 70, and she broke the barrier. So that's why I say
mm,
you can't lean on, oh, well, I'll never do that because I'm not in Atlanta. No, you can do everything that person's doing and more. You can crush your market. You just got to know what the real parameter is, and you got to be able to dial that up. You can't just go like even somebody who just heard us say that my CAC to LTV was 14.1x. Well, there's way more to that number once we dive into it that may make that way. We have incredible relationship with realtors here, and so I don't have to spend as much to get some of those. And those tickets may be $6,000-7,000, and they're pretty big. And then that person moves to the next house, and I also get the move-in punch list. And then I get the remodel. Like there's some things there that you got to look into my market versus somebody else's. So you can't even take that number and go, okay, well I got to get 14.1 because that's what he's doing. I wouldn't do that. We should probably talk some more.
mm.
People got to remember, you're bringing a lot of those relationships from prior experience, and you're flipping houses and relationships with agents before starting this business also. So somebody who maybe doesn't have any relationships coming into it, coming from a completely different industry, starting from scratch. Everybody starts from a different spot. So, comparing based on timeline, not a good idea.
Yeah,
Yeah,
everyone's on their own journey.
yeah,
Enjoy it, man. You only get to do it one time, so
yeah.
embrace that journey in whatever situations you got. But being honest with yourself with the parameters, and being honest with yourself on your work ethic, and all the different things of being responsible with what's before you to be able to accomplish. And all the guys out there listening, it's in your heart to do something great with this business, whether it's owner operator or multiple people. Enjoy the ride and learn from people that
Yeah,
are where you want to go. And that perspective is going to be different for everybody. So at the base
that's
level,
right.
enjoy the journey, guys. There's always more.